Good morning, everybody. Were you able to keep up with that? I know it was awfully quick, thanks to BBC Learning for that excellent example of what an algorithm is. The really funny thing about these videos is people watching us on live stream, good morning, everybody, have no idea what we're talking about because they didn't see it. So it's like showing up at a comedy club, hearing a big laugh and not hearing the joke that produced it. Algorithm is a series of steps. It produces a predictable result. We think about them as something that computers are loaded with, but the truth is our brains are kind of loaded with them too. I discovered this last week on a trip to San Francisco on the Oakland Ferry, which in my view is the experience on earth that is the closest to what we're promised in heaven. Not much is perfect in this world, but that Oakland Ferry ride to the city is awfully close to that. It's a really good approximation. So it's my birthday, and Jan takes me over there, and we're sailing across the bay, sitting out in the sunshine, and when we get to the other side, on the Embarcadero, I am treated to Blue Bottle coffee, and then we walk down Market Street where she buys me the best Cobb salad in the Western Hemisphere, and we spend an hour just talking, and I thought, wow, 40 years and we can still do 60 minutes together. That was probably the best part of the whole day. And then she brings it to the culmination, which is the highlight of the entire birthday, the trip back to Emeryville to the Apple Store. Now, I hear the angels sing at the Apple Store. I literally, angelic choirs when I walk in, it looks like heaven. It's full of bright light. It's awesome. And in this Apple Store awaits for me a brand new iPad Pro 9.7, which my wife has made possible for me to purchase using her own finances. Take me home now, Lord. It can't get any better than this. It was absolutely fantastic, except for one little problem in the form of a tourist that we met at the ferry dock who had a baseball hat and his t-shirt tucked into his jeans, you know, that tourist, and he blurts out, using his outside voice, this really inane political comment. In the middle of my experience, in the middle of my trip, and when I heard this, I immediately went into the red zone. I like to think of myself as this kind of very reasonable, kind of stable sort of a guy. When people say things, I go, and I like to think of it, it just didn't work this time. I went from reasonable to aggressive in just a nanosecond, and after I heard this remark, I'm thinking, you're an idiot. I'm not saying this, I'm just thinking it. You're an idiot. You have this third grade perspective on the issue you just gave voice to, and you've decided to prove it out loud by saying it in your outside cell phone voice. This is crazy. So now I'm ready to give this guy a ferry ride to Alcatraz in hopes that maybe he'll never come back. And the whole thing just, it made me think, I wonder if my thinking is set up like an algorithm when it comes to judging other people. This man met all my criteria for me to pull the trigger on him in just a few seconds, and he changed kind of the entire tone and flavor of my day. I wonder if you ever feel that way when somebody does something that really just sets you off, really just rubs you the wrong way, and suddenly you go from step 1 to step 12 and you're just ready to pull the trigger on the person. It's something like that seems to be kind of hardwired into us. That might be too strong a way to put it, but it's there in a pretty pronounced way, and it's really natural. I'll just speak for myself. I find that judge's chair a very appealing place, and I love to put on the black robes and rule and reign from that position, giving my opinion and evaluation of everybody else, especially if it's negative, because that's the kind of judgment that feels so good inside me. This seems to be such a common thing in people that Jesus took it on in the gospel we call Matthew, and he did it in a setting that we know today as the Sermon on the Mount, where he's speaking to a large group of people on a hillside. His closest followers are gathered right around him, and then behind him are hundreds, maybe thousands of other people who are following a little more at a distance, and they're sort of overhearing the teaching he's giving to these closest people, and he decides to judge judgment. He confronts it. And this is not an easy thing, because judgment is a central characteristic of Palestinian culture in the day. Large numbers of religious teachers and experts, lawyers are traveling around the countryside, making a living basically critiquing each other and attacking each other. And evaluating each other. And even in Palestinian village life, the relationships in these very insular, self-contained communities is very gossipy and snipey. It's not pleasant. It's harsh, and it's very much a contact sport to live in one of the villages. So when Jesus takes on this aspect of the culture, he is confronting something that is as central to them as maybe not the internet, but something like that might be to us today. So it's not a small thing or a peripheral issue. And when he comes to terms with it, he does it with these words in Matthew 7, verse 1. He says the unthinkable, judge not. That's just not something you can say to Palestinians. Judge not, that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that's in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye when there's a log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. Now, we can read those words and say, all right, I get it. We don't need the rest of the sermon because it plainly says, don't ever judge. We're done here, as they say. But Jesus himself, later in this same chapter, refers to a group he calls false teachers. That's 100% judgment. Later, he tracks down the religious experts of the day, and he says, you're a brood of vipers. In other words, you're like a nest of vicious snakes. There's just no way to get around that. That is an evaluation in the extreme negative, and that's one of the milder things he said about them. If the one who is without sin is practicing this, I have to step back from the passage and say, is he really saying there can be no evaluation at all? And he's talking here not about the evaluation of things. This isn't about being a movie critic. It's about the evaluation of people, and he's clearly engaging in what he seems to be prohibiting. So as I look at the passage in a little more depth, it can't be that no judgment is permitted whatsoever, because that wouldn't work for you anyway. The question really is, how does judgment function? So I want to talk with you for a couple minutes today about how to judge people, how to develop your skill to judge people. Jesus is proposing, if you will, a new algorithm, a new set of steps that if we walk through them, we can come to the correct kind of conclusion on how to make these evaluations. Because the truth of the matter is, if you don't make these evaluations, you won't survive a day. you won't live till sundown. No ability whatsoever to think rationally about how other people are acting. I mean, how would you know a safe person from a criminal? You have to make evaluations as a basic life survival skill. But how we do them is the difference between being a sort of negative, trolly, censorious person and someone who uses judgment in a wise and life-giving way, if I can be that strong. I think the algorithm begins in verse 1, and its first step is this. It's reluctance. The first two words are really key. Judge not. Not as in negative, as in no, as in don't, as in really, really hesitate about this. And so what I see coming from these words is the presumption being against involving myself in this. My lean is away from judging you, not toward judging you. Now, the internet is the biggest courtroom in the history of the world, and there is a judgment seat for everyone where you can rain down fire and brimstone on anyone that you would like, and using anonymous usernames, which is so brave, so courageous. And many people don't even bother with that. They use their actual name, and they challenge you to hit them back and down on movies and people and celebrities and friends and family. You find venom flowing like I can't prove. We've never seen it before, but I'd be really surprised if we ever had. So there's a giant echo chamber in which it seems that the lean is toward constantly judging someone and often doing it in a very harsh, negative way. Now, Jesus does not say don't judge because it's wrong. He doesn't say don't judge because it's a waste of time. And he doesn't say don't judge because it's hurtful to the person you're judging. Never says that. He says, don't judge because it's bad for you. In other words, if you want to preserve your own self-interest, a lean away from judgment is the best way to preserve yourself from being judged. I was part of a group that was organizing a seminar once back in my grad school administrator days, and we finally booked somebody famous to go to one of our seminars. We had so much trouble getting anybody who had published books and things to come to our meetings. We were not really prominent enough at that time, so we finally got our first person. This person was young and cool and famous. He'd written books for major publishing houses, and we were so excited, and we put him up in front of everybody. He was a little edgy and controversial, so it was even better. And we had a room packed full of young leaders, and he's speaking, and I'm standing in the back, and I'm thinking, we're just killing it here. This guy is really getting it done. He's making us look great. And then I heard a cell phone ringing. And I thought, how can this be? I mean, we put all of this work to organize this meeting. We fly this person in. He's one of the rising stars. And we finally get this guy on the way up before he's so famous that he has a contract with lawyers. And this is just going to put us on the map. And ring. And I'm thinking to myself, when I find the person, and it keeps ringing, you're such an idiot. You're so stupid. You won't even turn it off. Can't you hear? Shut off that phone. And then I realized it was mine. I put it in my backpack, and it was on the platform right behind where the speaker was ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing. And I thought, oh, Jesus, you're just telling us the truth here, aren't you? Judgment isn't bad for the people I judge. Although it might hurt them, it's worse for me, because every time I invest in it in the wrong way, it's going to come back on my own head. And the Lord, He's so kind, He's so merciful. He's just trying to save me from myself. He's trying to protect me from the consequences of my own actions. There's no one else like that. Jesus is the only one who will protect you from you. And that's what really makes Him special, one of the really amazing things. And so it's okay to judge if you begin with the presumption of reluctance. To pull the trigger on judgment, I have to get over that hill. I have to get over that standard and come to the environment in a reluctant way. I'll tell you this. The greater the quantity of judgment in the atmosphere, the lower its relative value. It's just like economics. When supply is infinite, price drops to zero. And so if you want to be heard by other people as a wise and discerning person, let your judgments be few. Because they'll know when it comes from you that it's not just your personality ventilating, but that you are discerning, thoughtful, and reflective, that you don't make evaluations easily, that you don't enjoy the process, and so your words will hit like a hammer because there aren't many of them. Reluctance is the first step. Here's the second step in the algorithm. Consistency. It jumps out of verse 2. For with the judgment you pronounce, that means the words you use to do it, you will be judged, and the measure you use will be measured to you. And so the question of consistency is, am I willing to be held to the same standard I use to evaluate you when I speak this judgment out? Out of my heart, the mouth speaks, Jesus taught in another place. And so those pronouncements, that's the word that's used here, they come from a heart and they reveal the condition of my heart. And the metrics are the kind of internal algorithm. The measuring stick is the standard I hold up to the person that I'm going to evaluate or speak out that evaluation about. And so the consistency standard says I have to use the same measuring stick on me. And I can't pronounce a judgment on anything or anyone else if I'm unwilling to live by that standard myself. Recently there was a study of Facebook about the most frequently used insulting words. And it's this amazingly comprehensive survey of what people are calling each other on Facebook. So I read it, and I found that it's basically the words I heard in junior high school. Nothing has been advanced by technology whatsoever. The stuff you heard in the locker room in junior high is exactly what people are using on Facebook. And the number one word that's used to insult and condemn other people was found used 10.5 million times just in the U.S., just in the time frame of the study. Now, the Oxford Dictionary folks have done a similar study of millions of words of internet content in comments between users where liberals and conservatives are at war, and they identified in one short segment of time 1,200 different insult phrases that are used, like those blankety blank liberals and those blank 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 conservatives going back and forth, flying through this giant judgmental echo chamber that we have on our hands. I used to say harsh things about the owners of small dogs until I got one. You idiots! Can't you hear that thing barking? What's the matter with you? Do you know how stupid you look when you're shopping in Target for a little cute designer sweater to put on him because he's cold in July in the Bay when it is our winter time? And the foolish little hats you put on him and the reindeer antlers at Christmas time? What? You need to get a job. You've got too much time on your hands. And now I'm in Target and my dog has a set of antlers. It will come back on my head because I cannot live by the same standards. So the first time I utter a word of judgment is my opportunity to ask, can I live the standard I'm imposing on you? If I believe I can, you've got a green light. Do it. Pull the trigger. But only if the consistency is there. Here's the third step in the algorithm that Jesus is promoting. I would call it humility. And it comes out of verses 3 and 4. He says, why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log? Some translations render that as plank, as in a floor joist or rafter, a huge piece of wood, a log that is in your own eye. Or how can you say to your brother, let me take that speck out of your eye, when there is a log in your own eye? Judgment is the process of trying to change someone else with the force of my opinion. I'll sanction you with my negative opinion until you see the errors of your way, and then you will change to become more like, well, me, actually, since it was my opinion that started this whole thing. Somehow, when I have a log in my eye, it's so much easier to see specks. Have you noticed that? We've got a big old rafter stuck up in there. Somehow, I don't need a magnifying glass to see the little specks in your eye. They're just so easy to see. You know, Jesus, working most likely with his father as a carpenter, he is not unaware of the feeling of wood chips and sawdust irritating the eye. That might have been almost a daily experience for him in his growing up years. His father might have come in from work covered in this stuff. We don't know any of that specifically, but probably there's a likelihood of that. And so when he writes this, he may have even says this, he may have had even a physical analogy in mind here. And I can see the truth of it in my own life. When I've got something wrong, I feel so much more like criticizing you. When I'm upset about something, when I've got an issue in my life, I have an inconsistency in my life, I can't turn into a speck finder. And nothing's right. Do you know this sensation? Because that plank hurts up in there. I mean, it irritates me. It's got me it's got me upset. And so your specks look like boulders to me. And you've seen this at work where somebody's upset about a project that's not going well, or your boss is on a rampage because the bottom line on this quarter wasn't good, and all of a sudden, even the cream in the coffee doesn't taste the right way because I get a state of irritation. And what this part of the algorithm says is that it's just one word. It says, why? Why are you doing that? Well, it's a rhetorical question. Why are you doing that? And so if I'm able to ask that question, I come up to the threshold of feeling like I'm judging, I have to pause there and ask myself that question. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? My wife will tell you when I get hungry, like at the end of the day, and haven't anything to eat yet, and my blood sugar level drops, it's a plank. I get grumpy. I get negative. Nothing seems right to me. It's just, I'm like a bear. You throw a bacon cheeseburger into me, and I'm back to my normal self. I'm one bacon cheeseburger from sin almost all the time. And when that blood sugar, that glucose level goes down, I'm like, I don't like that movie. I don't like you. I don't like the house. I don't like the car sounds funny. The dog smells, and Jesus just throws a one-word roadblock in my path. Why? Why are you doing that? The reason you're judging, he's saying, is because you've got such a big thing going on in your own eye. You're starting to project that on everybody else. And this step of the algorithm says, instead of dropping the hammer on someone else, humble yourself. Humble yourself. And say, wait, I need to get the log out first. That's humility practice. And then maybe we could do something. So if I cross that threshold and am able to answer the why question, then the algorithm works. And judgment becomes a possibility. Here's the next step. I would call it service. It's verse 5. You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Get your own plank out, and you can help me with my speck. And so one of the services that judgment offers is the ability to help someone else in a genuine way who needs the observation you're about to make to catalyze change in their own life. You're with a friend. They're about to go in for a critically important job interview. Everybody's all dressed up or dressed down, depending on where you're interviewing. You've got your brand new messenger bag on. You're all cool and everything. You've done all the research on the company, right down to the personal habits of the members of the board of directors. You're totally prepared. You've been reading websites day in, day out, and watching training videos to get you ready to really close the deal. But you've just come from lunch and you got a big chunk of spinach in your teeth. And you see that, and not having spinach issues of your own, what do you say to your good friend? Dude, you got a little something like right up in there, Do you know what I mean? And they go to the bathroom, look in the mirror, and they go, no, I should never have gone to that sushi place. And they come back up and say, thank you so much. You just saved my career. Without the plank, you can help someone with a spectrum. Right? In fact, we need each other in this way. We need to be able to correct each other in a loving way, but I can only do it when I'm in a plank-free posture. Because I've got that plank in my own eye, I'm going to be doing it out of anger, and I'm going to hurt you, and I'm going to say things the wrong way, and I'm going to say things when I shouldn't say anything because I'm dealing with my own stuff. But with that plank gone from a posture of humility, I can go to a friend. I've had friends come to me and say, in this situation, or when you're coming across in this way, or that's how this sounds to someone. I know maybe you didn't intend it that way, but that person was offended or whatever, and you can actually make real corrections, and the ability to do that is part of what makes a group a community. So we can help each other with our specks, but only when our planks have been removed. So service. So the last step in the algorithm is receptivity. Jumps to me out of verse 6. Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. This is the issue of the receptivity of the person who is hearing the judgment that you are about to give. And would you agree with me that a person's receptivity to your words depends on the setting, on the timing? Here's some good life advice. If you're a married couple, never try to settle anything in the time period between when you get home from work and when you have had something to eat together. That's a demilitarized zone. Just de-weaponize that whole time. Don't get into anything. The problem is you come home from work and you're all, you've got all this stuff on your mind and you're all torqued up, and plus, you had 10 Red Bulls that day just trying to get through work, and you blurt this thing up, that checkbook doesn't balance, and before you know it, a spec has become a plank because we've introduced it at the wrong time. The ability to sense when people can receive what I'm going to say in a humble, speck-removing way, and when they cannot. There are people who can never receive it. They just can't. And to go down that path will just blow your relationship up. Our families are very active in politics on Facebook. You may have noticed that Janet and I are not active at all in politics from this microphone, from Facebook, or anywhere else. And one of the reasons is that if we got involved in the things that our family members post, some of which are very reasonable and kind of mainstream, others of which are pretty intense. I mean, like, you idiot, intense, like that. There's just no way to win that. There's just going to go, it's just going to go badly, and what will happen is, in the attempt to make my point, remember, I'm trying to change you with the force of my opinion, the attempt to make my point, I'm going to lose my relationship with you and maybe lose my mind because it's going to turn into some kind of verbal shootout in an online setting. And so you don't, I don't take food from our dinner table and throw it to my dog. He would like that, but we don't do it because it's just not appropriate. There's no receptivity. And so I've got to look at how it lands and try to determine, is this something the other person can hear? And if they can they hear it now? Because a small miss on timing can make wisdom sound like foolishness to a person on the other end. We're not having judgment outlawed here because Jesus himself engages in it, and he engages in it really forcefully. What we're being given is a way to use judgment as a tool for building people, building community, and gluing us together rather than fracturing us apart. So I have the green light if I've overcome reluctance, if I'm consistent personally, if there's humility in my attitude based on that question of why, if it's going to serve the other person genuinely instead of giving me the kind of visceral satisfaction of, I really won that one, and if the people on the other end can actually hear what I'm going to say. If I can't get through all 5 steps of the algorithm, then I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to wait for another time for a different level of receptivity. But in every single case, I can use the opportunity as a way to get the planks out of my own eye. Because in the end, Jesus' teaching is about avoiding what can go wrong for us. You know, when you think about it, God, who is the judge of the universe, is reluctant to bring judgment on anyone. God, the judge of the universe, in his perfect holiness, lives in a completely consistent ethical and moral character. God, who is the judge of the universe, arrives like a baby in a manger, rather than coming with armies and chariots of fire. God, who is the judge of the universe, serves us by dying on the cross. And God, who is the judge of the universe, simply waits for us to open our hearts in receptivity as he demonstrates his character for us in all of these beautiful ways. I want you to judge, but to judge in the way that Jesus has given to us as a way of serving and loving rather than destroying and tearing people to shreds. Lord, thank you for caring about what happens in our real life, the practical issues, the things that we really have to do at home and on the job. And we ask you, God, today that you would just, by the power of your Holy Spirit, you would move in our hearts, and if there are planks in our eyes, that we would use these next few moments to dispense with those things, to set them aside, so that we can use the hearts you put in us to help other people, God. Help us to work with each other gently and to be able to speak the truth in love. We thank you for that, and we thank you, God, that with your judgment, there's so much mercy. Thank you for the invitation into a relationship with you. We pray in Jesus' name. I'm going to ask you to stand with us, if you would, for just a moment, and we're going to, with the help of some video, have more of a worship experience at this time. And if you'd like to have prayer individually this morning, we'll, of course, make that available to you in the back of the room. A few of us will be back there to pray for you. This is just a wonderful moment. If you've got some planks or some specks or whatever your state is today, this is a great moment to lay that down. Just to leave it here. Let's just leave this place like a lumber yard inside. We're leaving behind our baggage and all the stuff that gets in our eyes and keeps us from seeing. So, Lord, we ask you to make that so this morning in the name of Jesus.